Hey there, how's it going, Mr. Carson?
How are you, Corey? Nice to see you.
Yes, good to see you. I've been listening to your podcasts, but I get to meet you face to face here somewhat, I guess, in a virtual sense. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a time to be alive, brother.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, for a guy like me who makes a living out of ranting, I mean, they give me lots of stuff to work with, so I should be thankful for that. But it's pretty miserable for the rest of the people having to live through it.
I feel the same way with content for my podcast. I'm never going to run out.
No,
We've got a little bit of a journey ahead of us, I think.
yeah, well, and you've sort of changed formats. So, I mean, just to give some background to people who aren't familiar with you, you'd been in media for some time, but you were with more of a music format station, but you'd still speak, on issues and things in between, right?
Yeah, I mean, I introduce songs on the radio. It's not a very complicated job, and part of my job is to connect with the audience and speak about things that are relevant, and but a lot of silliness as well as the stereotypical morning radio show DJ giving away money and playing fun contests. But part of connecting with your audience is reflecting what's happening in the world, and it started to get to the point where I wasn't able to speak about the things that were going on. And at that point, you start to feel like your audience is going to perceive you as being disconnected or out to lunch or with your head in the sand. And then I started to realize the media landscape around me is like that. And I didn't want to be a part of that. So I'd really hoped that I could sprinkle in a little bit of what we call the truth to my audience. And anytime I did, the reaction for me personally in my Instagram with DMs and emails and messages and tweets was phenomenal. However, it obviously didn't fly very well with the management.
No, and that story's common in a lot of areas. And I mean, and you didn't even go, in my view, terribly deeply into issues in that. You just, express some things, break up some shows. And we see that trend a lot. Like I listen to a lot of music, but I'm a talk radio listener, or at least I used to be a lot, because that's where I get a lot of political things when I'd work, I'd listen. And that's where you'd expect to hear that kind of discourse and things. And it has gone to crap, to be blunt, because talk show hosts are afraid of shaking things up. I mean, that used to be the basis of things is exploring concepts and policies and going into them and not necessarily agreeing. But we've seen, I don't know if you're familiar with Danielle Smith. She was a host out here in Alberta. She ended up so many clashes with the station management. She had to quit. She's on her own and sort of podcasting now as well. But it's those pressures that keep coming on. And it's unfortunate because we're getting a very dull vanilla world of discourse out there, and it's to our detriment.
It's a very strange time these last couple of years because as a media personality, we have coaches and consultants that come in and tell us how we can grow our audience. And one of the big things that I was always told is, yeah, if you can ruffle the feathers and get people to react, if you can make someone laugh, that's powerful. But if you can make someone cry or get angry, that's also really powerful. And so I always I dipped into those sort of bag of tricks when I'd be introducing, sort of silly topics. And you try to divide the audience. You try to polarize people so that they're intrigued and interested in the conversation. But suddenly these topics that have come up with the pandemic, it's like if you even go there, if you ruffle those feathers, you're shut down. And it starts to make you really feel uncomfortable in your stomach. You think, well, why can't I engage in these conversations? People want to. I mean, we're all on Instagram. We can see the conversations happening. We can see the mothers, debating in their Facebook groups whether or not they should get their kids vaccinated. I wanted to be able to present both sides of the story, and but you're just not allowed to. Like it's almost creepy.
Well, it is. I mean, there's always been a push. I think there's always been human nature in some individuals that they would rather just shut down contrary opinion than debate it. And that's just natural. But they never had so much power, it seems, as they have today. I mean, before they could scream and try and shut people down, but it wouldn't happen. But I mean, the term is cancel culture, and it's very real. And it's shutting things down. I mean, you don't have to agree with somebody. You should be able to debate it. I mean, if they're that far off the edge, if they're that wrong, talk about it. Don't shut them down.
Mm-hmm. Especially when there's so much evidence to show there's another opinion that's very valid. The cancel culture is not just for media personalities and censoring people on Instagram. It's like doctors that are coming out, scientists that are coming out. They're being shut down. It's a very, I just interviewed a guy yesterday that's going to be on my podcast probably later today, Dr. Stephen Pellick from University of British Columbia. This guy is like, I mean, imagine a simpleton radio host trying to interview a scientist at a university. It's not only intimidating, but it was, my mind was melting with what he's telling me. And he's like, these facts that I'm sharing with you are out there. Everyone knows what's happening. So him reading the mainstream headlines, I mean, he's beside himself that, you know, this information is in front of Bonnie Henry. It's in front of all the other people making these decisions. Yet they're choosing to hide it, you know, bury it, and ignore it. So, dude, I don't know what's next, but all I know for me personally, I couldn't just sit by and become the guy that looks oblivious or out to lunch, you know. Although I've been interpreted in a few different ways. I see that there is an insatiable appetite for just some authenticity, for some truth, and for being curious. It's not like I know all the answers, but I'm curious. Like, I want to know why it's so weird that I would want to present another opinion. Why is that a bad thing? So if we ask more questions, if we get involved in just honest, mature adult debate, I mean, that's where we need to go.
Well, and you know, as you pointed out, I mean, there's an audience for it. I mean, I don't know how often I get it as well when I've gotten a good guest on and they talk and people say, oh, I am so happy I was able to hear that. I can't hear this person anywhere else. I find them on YouTube. I see them on Twitter, but you don't see them on CTV or CBC or any of our main outlets anymore. I mean, the people want to hear it. And it's showing, I mean, it's giving me hope, though, because we're finding ways to bypass it. I mean, to look at the biggest example in North America has got to be Joe Rogan. I mean, there's people are livid with him. And, you know, Rogan himself has rarely actually said too many controversial things. It's guests that he's brought on, which, again, right or wrong, he's there to ask them. He's inquiring, and it's putting it out there. But people don't even want that discussion to happen, and that's distressing.
Joe Rogan is arguably the greatest content producer on the planet right now. His ratings are, I think, I don't know, like 11 million a day, 11 million
incredible.
people, and just dominating mainstream. The next guy to go solo will probably be Tucker Carlson. You know, I mean, because his ratings are, and he's fantastic at what he does, you know, 3 million a night compared to 11 million with Joe Rogan. So it's only a matter of time before he goes independent and more people end up doing that. It's disappointing though, Corey, because there's something magical about mainstream. I don't know if it's nostalgia, you know, the way we grew up with it and it was always the truth. It's frustrating to not see your beliefs represented in mainstream media, because there's something to it. It almost validates it in some way, validates it with your friends, your neighbors, your you know, family members, coworkers, that you matter, that your opinion matters. And when it's not in mainstream media, you end up feeling like a crazy person. Like, I've looked at myself in the mirror going, oh, I wish I didn't know what I knew, because now I'm like a nut job. I'm the mayor of Nutsville. So when you have someone, and that's what really motivated me to, although it was short-lived, to say something on the radio that's public, that's mainstream, that's a pop music station, playing Bruno Mars and all the rest, is that for so many people, it was like, oh my God, this opinion was represented in the mainstream. I'm not crazy. And of course, now I'm off in the corner doing a podcast, but the way the people have found me and reached out and said, yo, thanks for at least it was, even if it was one or two blurbs on the air, you gave me a little bit of hope, you know? So yeah, you're right though. It's great that we can find ways around the mainstream. I think people are waking up, especially after what happened in Ottawa. The trust has been lost, and people are going to be seeking out truth tellers wherever they are.
Yeah, well, and people are gaining a new audience, and some commenters are already saying they'd listened to your podcast with the accountant. It was very widespread and appreciated by people. I mean, it sounds like it'd be dry subject matter, but no, it's very actually engaging. I mean, if you're talking about an audit of a downtown business or something, maybe it'd be a little dull, but we're talking about some big dollars and some crazy stuff going on the front, and nobody else is talking about it. And people are happy to hear somebody is.
That's a great episode, actually. Even when I'm interviewing these people, sometimes I wonder, oh, is it going to be dry? That guy was great. And the episode is called What Happened to the Convoy Money on my podcast channel. But I mean, this guy was in the room. He's describing how people are coming in with fifth loads of cash after the GoFundMe and the Give, Send, Go accounts were shut down. People were showing up in Ottawa and just throwing money on a stage, and volunteers are like picking up the cash, coming in, and that they don't even want to touch it because they feel guilty or they don't want to be, there's just so much love in the air. So people come in and dump the cash on a table, and then this accountant guy's like, okay, bundle up into envelopes, so let's hand it out to the truckers. I mean, what he saw behind the scenes it's so interesting. That's so far my most listened to episode. People just love it. But he really gives an insight into Tamara, and who is still, I believe, in jail without bail. He gives a real insight into how she got involved, and it wasn't really meant to happen that way. She was just starting a fundraiser to help the truckers. Because of her savviness on social media, she ended up becoming the face of the convoy, which was never meant to be her thing. Anyways, it's a fantastic interview. I'm glad that your audience has checked it out. That's cool.
Absolutely, and we're getting voices out that couldn't get there before, and I think the mainstream really overplayed themselves a lot over this whole convoy thing. I mean, it was actually, I got to admit, in a self-serving sense, for the Western Standard, we gained more subscribers in this last month than, you know, in many months of effort before. I mean, we'd been doing well, but it spiked us because people, and the same thing we were hearing from them. Oh, I just can't turn the TV on anymore. I can't open the paper. I mean, I watched that CBC one when a host was implying that there was Russian involvement in the money going to the convoy. Like, this is our state broadcaster, you guys. I mean, come on.
It's become like TMZ in a sense.
Yeah, and definitely an agenda. I mean, there's always been some media bias. That's reality. There's leanings, but to get so flagrant, it really soured people. I think they overplayed their hand. Another area, though, that we see a lot, and now that you're moving into that world with podcasts and things, is, they used to call them the intellectual dark web, and it's tied in with Joe Rogan and Peterson and Gad Saad and a lot of those professors and such. You know, they're from universities. They've been canceled in their own schools quite often, and that's another disturbing area, because this is the next generation coming up, and they're getting an incredibly slanted worldview as they go through higher education. But at least these professors aren't just canceled and shunted out. They're actually getting out and bypassing the filters of the mainstream media and the filters of their educational institutions, and they're reaching a lot of people.
It's shocking. I've been a Joe Rogan fan for a long time, and, don't agree with everything. You don't ever agree with everything that someone says. But I mean, in my opinion, that guy always held his guests' feet to the fire. He's got a producer. He's famous for his catchphrase, pull it up, Jamie, on the screen, or whatever. He's got a producer in real time. Okay, you're saying that's a fact. Let's pull up the document. Where is it? Tell us the website. They pull it up. They review it in real time. I mean, his interviews often go for, 2 or 3 hours long, because he is fact checking as he goes. And I think a lot of his apologetic tone lately is because now that he's really moved into the mainstream with the Spotify deal, he's no longer on the fringe. In the fringe, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Once you're in the mainstream now, people come after you. So, he's had to really, lately in the last few weeks, be much more balanced. And I can even hear the way his interview style is. He's very, very smart the way he does it. It almost seems like he's arguing against his guest, but to draw out more of the facts. So he's a genius. It's no doubt. No wonder that he's at the top of his game and the #1 broadcaster now in the world.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's a great interviewer. I mean, for people who haven't listened to his shows, I mean, part of it, what's subtle with it is he's genuinely engaged. That's what's making it worth listening. And he's not going to overrun his guest. He's curious. He takes his questions where they will take him, because he's genuinely wants to get an answer out of it. It doesn't mean he agrees with the guest, but he's pulling more information out of them, and he's very good at it, and it makes it a good listen. I mean, I couldn't pull off a show for 3.5 hours. I would bore everybody right to tears after after an hour and a half. They're already starting to drop off on me here. So for him to actually gain followers and make such an engaging thing. And again, these platforms didn't exist 20 years ago. There was no such thing as an independent show that could be so long and so in depth. And like I said, it's a frustrating time, but it's an exciting one. I mean, the whole world is open to new views now, and it's going to be hard to stop us.
Yeah. Even for myself, I mean, thank God technology is where it is now, where, guys like us can reach the world and reach, thousands of people. A few years ago, I would have been dead in the water for expressing my views. And maybe I wouldn't have had the courage to say something, to be honest, because, I have 3 kids. I have a 4-year-old, I have an 8-year-old and a 17-year-old stepdaughter. And, my #1 job is to provide for them. But with people now, I mean, my Instagram account has been steady around 30,000 people for a while. And then after this, within less than a week, I jumped to, I think I just passed 70,000. And for me, I can't even, it's mind boggling. I don't know how real famous people do it with their millions of followers. My 70,000, I'm trying to message people back, and it's just And I had basically a lump in my throat for the first 2 weeks nonstop. I mean, legit, like getting teary eyed reading some of these messages. It has made me feel, although I've lost my job and that's a whole another scary topic, it has made me feel like I'm getting paid in love. If that, I know that sounds a little corny. Um, I feel more relevant now these last 2 or 3 weeks than I have for the last 2 years on pop radio. So I'm just going to take my run. Yeah, Joe Rogan's a huge inspiration. I want to kind of follow in his vein of truth telling and curiosity, like you mentioned. Interview some voices that aren't getting exposure. So I am revitalized in my passion for broadcasting. I'm excited. And there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of territory and probably a lot of weird things are going to happen over the next 5 years. You know, as I watch your show, yeah, you know what's up. There's a lot of things. The stage is being set for some weird stuff to go down. And I'm honored and privileged now to be one of the voices out there trying to spread another point of view.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear from you and humanize them and make some people realize as well that not every person who's in the mainstream media or was in the mainstream media is evil or infected or bad. You know, the institutions themselves, I think, are rotten to the core, but a lot of people within them, a lot of the people who make up the Western Standard actually are former mainstream media writers and producers and such. They've left that, but landed here. I mean, there's some, as you pointed out, I mean, you still got to fear for your own job. You got bills to pay like everyone else. We have a talk radio show host in Calgary who I used to really, really enjoy. He's just really, again, gone so flatline and dull. I can't handle him anymore. I know he hasn't changed, but he needs to keep his job. Yeah. And he's got a young family and you know, he doesn't, not everybody can necessarily make the leap into a new platform or format. I mean, social media, it's a scary jump and you've made that jump and so far so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time it's station management. They're terrified because the people who are loudest on the keyboard, you know, the keyboard warriors, you know, I remember the first time I even mentioned that I didn't like wearing a mask. Now the full conversation was, I will wear a mask, you know, in the early days, I'll wear a mask to protect my neighbors. I don't like it. And the keyboard warriors came out and just my boss came in the next morning with thousands of emails. People were so upset. And I thought, wow, that's crazy that now you can't even express that you don't like wearing a mask. Like, we're not supposed to like it. We're not supposed to rush out and get a mask that matches our outfit. Like, it's not supposed to be a fun fashion accessory. This is a crappy thing that we've got to cover half our faces. But even expressing that you don't like something like that gets a certain type of person really riled up. And that really freaks management out. So then, you know, although they're not bad people, they don't want to lose ratings and lose advertisers and sponsorships and money ultimately. So then they end up telling everyone to shut up. So you're right. Good people end up keeping their mouths shut for a variety of reasons. And my hope is that, you know, more people in mainstream will just start to stand up a little bit. I don't know if it's behind closed doors and try to talk to their managers and go, guys, like we need to stay relevant here. And the people out there, they want to hear another side. It's getting a little tacky now that we can't stand up and have another point of view. I don't know how that's going to happen, but you know, we can just hope.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, a lot of the mainstream, they're not making a lot of money in those organizations, radio stations, newspapers. It's not like it used to be. So they got to start re-examining themselves. The model isn't working. You know, you're competing now with things like the Standard, like your podcast, even Rebel and other things are coming out there. There's substitutes, and streaming music, of course, is really cutting into radio stations. So maybe shutting down, you know, discussion is the wrong way to go if you want to retain audience with unique content, but they aren't ready to look that way yet. Maybe that'll come as they get more desperate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of old school systems need to crash and burn before they're rebuilt. And yeah, I don't know what that looks like, and it's kind of a scary, nerve-wracking thought. We all want to be comfortable, but I think over the next, you know, 5-7 years, I think it could be very interesting. Lots for us to talk about.
Most certainly. Well, I'll let you get on with it. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your podcasts and your interviews now that you're unrestrained and settling into the new world of alternative media. You know, as I said, it's a tough realm to get into, but the world's your oyster, right? Like you could, I think somebody else referred to you as perhaps the next Joe Rogan or the Canadian Joe Rogan. I mean, that's the bar to aspire to for sure.
Someone called me the Walmart Joe Rogan.
I'll just start. Hey, there's a lot of money in Walmart.
Hey, I was still flattered. I'll take it, man.
I'm not above buying stuff from there now and then. Hey, times are tight.
Thanks for the time today, man. It was really nice to connect with you.
Great, thanks. So where can we find what you're doing and what you're up to? I saw some of that in the background there, just to remind everybody and the people listening on audio, how can we find Kid Carson and your shows going forward?
You can connect with me at kidcarson.com. There's a link there with all my podcast episodes and ways that you can support. And yeah, I mean, I'm flattered by all the great response so far. And yeah, I'm on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify. I am doing video podcasts. I'm not like you. You look very comfortable behind the mic, the camera. I've been a radio guy forever and never had to worry about what my face looked like if I had my double chin exposed. So now I've got the camera set up. I'm doing these podcasts in video, which you can watch on Spotify. And that's another whole thing I'm trying to conquer.
Well, I'm certain you will. I mean, you get used to it more as you go. With me, it's just a matter of age. I'm not so worried about things like when I was in my 20s. I'm happily married, and my wife puts up with how I look now, so the audience can deal with my shiny forehead and bad hair.
Yeah, got a little shine there. See?
Yeah, it's easy style in there. All right. Well, no, it was really great. I hope I get the chance to talk with you again soon down the road, and I really want to see your podcast take off. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Corey.